We feel like we had just started to understand the smartphone when all of a sudden now AI hits the scene. And we wonder, will we get trapped by a device of our own making, by AI? Does AI possess enough collective intelligence to actually overthrow humanity and create this kind of apocalypse that we hear about? And in fact, this is the plot of every dystopian movie that we hear about in technology, right? We know that the first image that is conjured for us is one of impending doom. This is what we think about when we've heard about AI for the last 10 years. So of course there's fear among people who are thinking about this coming into the workplace. We know that this fear abounds, though. In the same breath, there's a genuine curiosity. There's a fascination with AI and an excitement about where we're going. It's why we're all here today. We're curious. But at the same time, we have to sort of reconcile this duality in the world and ourselves to understand, where do we land with this topic? Where are we heading? Where do we want to be heading? And we yo-yo between these alternate realities as we're trying to find what is the most likely outcome that's going to happen. It's part of why this conversation that just happened before me is so formative for all of us, because we're looking ahead. Where is this going? What is the outcome that we're desiring or that we're even hoping to see? And this is not actually that surprising from a human perspective. We've seen the same sort of response again and again. I'm a happiness researcher, and I study the intersection of happiness and technology. And what I've seen is that there is an equal amount of fear that has abounded every time we have a new technological innovation, whether it is the iPhone, the television, the radio, even the Gutenberg Bible and the printing press. We find that this reaction comes again and again. And here is just one example of a journal article that came out about this. The average child addict starts lapping up his fascinating crime at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon and continues for much of the time until sent to bed, wrote the author, a doctor named Mary Preston. The spoiled children listened until around 10 o'clock, the less indulged until around 9 o'clock. The report concluded that more than half of children had become addicted to radio dramas. It's from 1941. The same conversation could have been ported into 2011, right? We see this again and again and again. Our concerns are not new. They just start to look a little bit different. And so if we know this about the human response to innovation, what are we going to do about it? And I think many of you in the role of HR have such a central role to play in shaping the narrative and the dialogue that the individuals who work for you are going to be able to process and deal with. This graph comes from 2023 from the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, and they go through the narrative of the disruptive tech cycles. And for many individuals, they are predicting that we are not yet at the height of hysteria about generative AI. Those of us who are here are maybe a bit further along on the cycle. We're a little bit on the earlier adopted side, and we're reaching the point of practicality, although we're not quite there yet. But for so many people who are lagging behind, who are still trying to grapple with these topics, I think that we have a duty of care as individuals and as leaders to be able to shape this conversation for them. Will AI have pitfalls? Absolutely. Will it change the landscape of the job market? Yes, it will. But do I foresee a technological apocalypse? No, I don't. 7 years ago, I wrote a book called The Future of Happiness, and there is nothing quite like being a first-time author and taking on such a big topic as the future of humanity and happiness for all time. But I did it, and I look back at the book and I realized that I was curious how much I had actually thought about AI in the course of writing that book. And I certainly do write about it, and I write about the same conversation we're having today. But the real focus of the book was on the smartphone revolution, because at that time, we were worried that smartphones were going to destroy the fabric of society, of the world. Today, we're talking about AI. Again, where are we going to go with this? And I think that we have to be very careful and cautious about the way that we frame some of the conversations, because we're leaders in this space. This is one of the headlines that really bothers me, actually, that came out, I believe it was this year. No, it was last year. AI leaders warned that AI leaders warned that technology poses a risk of extinction like pandemics and nuclear war. Oh my gosh. 50% of AI researchers, it quotes in the article, think that the AI will actually create our own apocalypse. That's not great news. These are the researchers and the creators, right? So when we hear that, what we hear is panic. And I think that while I'm all for risk mitigation and risk assessment, I also see the impact that sensationalized headlines have on individuals. And as I often say, it's not nice to scare people and then just walk away, right? We have to do something about this. And as important as it is to think about the unintended consequences of AI, I think it's equally important to think about the unintended consequences of fear-mongering for people who are dealing with this information, who are the victims of, or they feel like the victims of big technology around us. So people are like rubber bands. They absorb and they hear and they get overwhelmed by all this information, and then they start to snap back and they start to block out. And sometimes they even start lawsuits, none of which are great responses. And if we can get ahead of that conversation, we can actually head off some of the difficulty in making this transition. I could add a fourth actor in the scene, though, and one that I did not put up here is the co-pilot. Here we are at Microsoft talking about it, and the three actors I've mentioned are humans. But the fourth one, I do believe, is going to be the co-pilots, whether it's specifically Copilot or other AI or generative AI type of programs, will be coming alongside. And the role for all of us as we're thinking about the future is really to begin to liaise between these different roles. Sometimes it means cross-collaboration between departments, and sometimes it'll mean taking on these different roles within ourselves, taking on all three different roles to then work with Copilot to be able to liaise and to be able to think on a higher plane about where we're heading in the future. That's the role that we play as human beings in the future of AI. We need each and every one of you. And it's essential that we get out of these thought loops of fear and really start to lay the groundwork. Don't be hesitant about trying ChatGPT or Copilot if you haven't tried it yet. I hope you will do it today. Take 10 minutes, take an hour, go play with it, go discover, go learn, because that is the beginning stepping stone of understanding what are we wrestling with? What are some of the benefits? What are the possibilities? You've heard that message again and again from all the leaders who've been up here on the stage, and I think it's so important because we have this duty of care to innovate well. And that means leaning into this cross-collaboration, the creators working with the cops working with the consumers, and vice versa.